good morning, everyone. Jape here again. So today we will cover the Internal Sales Invoice Applet. Okay. So for today's content is the introduction of the Internal Sales Invoice Applet and how to create the sales invoice transaction. And I will focus on the E-invoice part. Okay. So what is the Internal Sales Invoice can do? The Internal Sales Invoice Applet helps streamline the process of managing sales invoices by allowing businesses to efficiently track and handle these documents. A sales invoice is an accounting document that businesses issue to customers and clients to record sales transaction and request payment. Then for the sales invoice, outline the goods and services provided with transaction dates, confirmation of money owed, taxes payable, and other key information. So basically, the sales invoice like a credit sales to the customer. Okay, so in the sales invoice menu, then we will start with the search function. Then from the search is at one search bar, you can search by the customer, by the branches, by the sales agent. For the marketplace order is referred to the Lazada or Shopee orders. And you can filter by creation date or transaction date. Then you can filter by the posting status also. Because once you create the sales invoice, you can put the sales invoice in draft mode. Draft mode, that means you still can edit the sales invoice. So after you confirm all the invoice information, then you click final. Okay, so once final, then you will go to posting to accounting. So in the sales invoice listing, you can just filter by the few different status here. Okay, so when we create a sales invoice, these are the main tab that we cover. So for left-hand side is from the main detail until the attachment. So this is the tab that we recommend for the user to open so that you can see this information. Then from the 12 to 16 is an additional part that you can just enable to view the information. Okay, so that means the tab here is an optional part. You can just disable or enable it. Okay, so this is the main detail for the transaction. So I will go to the applet directly. Then later on we cover back the PPT slide here. Okay, so from the menu here, you just search Internal Sales Invoice Applet. Then you can see this applet over here. So left hand side is our menu. We start with the sales invoice menu. And then lines items, pick pack queue, sales invoice template, file import, intercompany transaction, file export. Then this part is a setting part. Then is the other one is personalization. Okay, so I will cover the sales invoice menu first. So the sales invoice here, this is the listing that I mentioned just now. So the advanced search function. Then you can search by customer, by branch. Okay. Then this is the listing. So from the listing, you can click and view the information detail. Okay. And from the columns here, you can adjust your column. Okay, so once you adjusted the information, the column, so this one will save to the personalization. So meaning that next time when you open back the same applet, they will follow this arrangement. Okay. So to add a new transaction, just click this plus button. Okay, I will change to longer to one page so that you can see full detail. Okay. So this is the main detail. Okay. So the document type is called Internal Sales Invoice. This is the shortcut SLSINV. Okay. So document tenant number is after we fill in the main detail account lines, then system will auto generate the document number for the tenant document. Once we confirm everything with final, the system will generate the company and branch number. So if you sync from other system, we have a client.information. For branch, this is follow the personalization default branch. So my default branch is this E-invoice company, and every company, every branch will tag to the location. So this one will auto-populate the location. For the sales agent, you can select from the drop-down list. Let's say my sales agent is this person. Okay. So for the transaction date is default to current date, today date. So if the user with the permission only can change the date. If not, by default, user cannot change the date. Okay. Credit terms and credit limit is after we selected the customer. Then you can key in any reference remarks information. Okay. If the customer account with the member information, then you can see the member over here. Okay. For this one, the base currency is MYR. If you do any export transaction, you can change the currency. So this currency also based on the customer setting. So you can key in the exchange rate. Okay. For the Forex history, this is for the history transaction that we configure under the Forex Applet. Then you can just get the live rate from the applet. Additional part is this sales lead, so you can differentiate, categorize your sales under which category. So this drop down is a customization, then you can just configure by yourself. Okay. So for main detail, usually we just check our branch and salesman over here. Then next we go to account. Account is to select your customer data. So the customer account, you go to entity ID. Then here you search your customer. So let's say I search my name. The customer information, this one already covered in the customer applet previously. So every customer you created in the customer applet, the data was saved and you just call back from here. So you can see the entity name, the entity type, the ID number, email. Okay. So for the e-invoice information is under e-invoice part later on. Okay. Then you can select the customer billing address, shipping. So this one is selected from the customer applet. Okay, and then we go to line. Line item is to add a new product. Okay, we just click the plus button to search the product. Okay. So you can see the default branch, the product code, product name, the sales agent. So for every transaction by line, we can change the agent. So this is for the commission purpose. So because sometimes the commission is based on the line product sales agent. So we can change the line sales agent over here. Okay, UOM, you can select the UOM. Then after UOM is your pricing. So you can select the price from the drop down. This is the e-invoice UOM part. So H87 is a pieces. Then your quantity base, how many quantity you want to sell to the customer. E-invoice text type is the text type that we configure under the product. So by default, is configured under the .item maintenance set. So user no need to change anything. User can click and view the information. Okay, this is the unit price, then total amount. Any items remark, you can just fill in here. Okay, once confirmed, you just click add. Then you will add one item over here. So this is one item. You can see the document shop code. Quantity, unit price, and total amount. So the rest is additional information that you want to assign to segment, to the project, to the profit center code. Yeah, so this is all additional information. Okay, so for the serialized product, you need to key in the serial number. Okay, so you can just continue to add your product when you want to sell more product, more item. Okay, so you can see after I added the line, then this button will update at the final button. So you can continue to update the information once you click save button. So save, the transaction will go to draft mode. Okay, you can see this is under draft mode. Then the document number for company and branch is NAA. So that means it's not generated yet. Okay. So in this mode, you still can continue to update the data. Okay, once you confirm, you just click final. Okay, before we go to final, we go to e-invoice. So for the e-invoice submission, this is under the submission tab. So this one, the submission type, you can choose, you want to submit the e-invoice by individual or consolidated. Okay, so if a customer requests for the e-invoice, then you submit as individual. Okay, then this is all the e-invoice information that required by LHDN. Okay, so once we update this one, we can just click final the transaction. Okay, sales invoice created. So this format will follow your current existing format without the e-invoice information. Okay, so it's called sales invoice. And then this document number is 1001406. So now I will go to the my e-invoice admin applet to show you the e-invoice submission part. Okay, in my invoice admin applet, you go to posting queue. So in the posting queue, you can see the transaction over here. So posting skill, you can see the transaction over here. So by manual submission, you just click tick button to submit. So this part actually is auto run every 15 minutes. So we submit the document to LHDN. So for the consolidate is submit monthly. So now I just want to do my testing. I just do the manual submission. I tick and then I click submit. Okay, once this one submitted, then you can go to the internal submission to IRB. Then you will see this transaction is in queue. Okay, and then you can go to my invoice portal. This is LHDN my invoice portal. This is under pre-production testing environment. So you can see the customer, this is the buyer. The buyer not yet received any data because it's in queue. Okay, so these two are the previous receiving data. Okay, so this transaction still in queue. Okay, so for the manual submission, I just submit again. Okay, then I go to the portal, I just refresh. Okay, so you can see customer will receive the e-invoice after the company, the supplier side submitted the transaction. So this is under this buyer account. Okay, if I change to supplier account, need to change from here. Okay, so this is under supplier account document. Okay, then you can see this document submitted by the supplier. Okay, so this part is LHDN side. Then how about our internal sales invoice part? Okay, so just now this invoice we submitted, right? So under e-invoice information, you can see the progress. So the progress is 4 stage. So pending in posting queue, in batch pool, internal submission queue, then submitted to IRB. Okay, so this one all passed. Okay, if any error, system will just inform you the error over here. Okay. When we go to submission part, you can see this submission tab is individual, all the document information. Then from here, you can see the QR code. Okay, so this QR, the validation, you need to wait for a while. Then I will show you the previous one. Okay, for the communication part is once you get the confirmation from IRB, you can just send this e-invoice to your customer with the QR code. Okay. So okay, I will stop here. Then I will show you the previous transaction. Okay, so this transaction with error, you can see this is a cross button. Then once this error, the next step is just pending and pending. Okay. So this is the progress that we can, beside we check in the My Invoice Admin Applet, we can check by the transaction level, by the by the document level. Okay, and then this submission is what is the submission tab. So by default, actually we submit by consolidate. Okay, so this is another example. So you can see the validation URL. Okay, so with the validation URL code, then you can scan the QR code to get more information, or you click export to get the e-invoice format. So the sample of the e-invoice format is like this. So you can see the supplier information. The this one we call company name lah. So supplier T number, registration number, SST ID, MSIC code. Okay, and then the buyer information over here. So for the buyer team, if they provide you any TIN number, is this is the buyer team. Okay, if no TIN number provided from the buyer, the TIN number will be what? Still remember? Okay, so the EI 99999, then 10. Still remember the EI 9 times 0 and 10 is for the public ID, 20 is for the foreigner, right? 30 is for the supplier. That one is for the self-bill invoice. 40 is for the what? For the government customer. Okay, so this is the TIN number and the buyer IC number, address, email, contact number information. So this information you can see just now is under e-invoice tab, is under all the e-invoice buyer details side. Okay, so any payment mode, billing period, this one is optional. And then the document number, the invoice date, the original invoice reference number. So the classification code. So this classification code is mentioned in the product. So you can see the product classification code, then the quantity, amount, any discount, any tax information, the total amount. Okay, so this QR, same with the QR just now. So you can just scan and get the information. So this is the digital signature. Okay. So in summary, the e-invoice tab will refer to the progress update, the submission, the communication part is send the document, send the e-invoice to customer, and then later on we will cover the cancellation part. Okay. Then this is a summary for the 4 stage of the progress update. For the e-invoice submission, then you can see the buyer information, the buyer name, the document number, Then at the bottom, you can scan this QR to get more information, export button to get the e-invoice format. Okay, so this is an example for the export format that I showed you just now. So when you scan the QR, you will get this information. So you can use your mobile phone to scan, so you can see the buyer information same as your invoice. Okay, then the communication part, if you want to send to your customer, then you just key in your customer name, email, and email template. So for the email template is under the setting part. So once that one just configure one time. Okay, you can just select the email template from this part to set up. So for the sending of the e-invoice to the customer, this one we can set the schedule. Scheduler, once we receive all the confirmation from LHDN, we can just in batch submission directly send to your customer. You don't need to create one by one. Okay, so for the e-invoice cancellation part, right? So this part, user can request for the cancellation within 72 hours. Okay, so for this part, right, you can see this one is available hour for the cancellation. So for this transaction still remain 62 hours. So if over the available hours, the customer not allowed to cancel. So actually customer equal to the buyer. We used to call customer. Okay, I changed back to 2 pages. Okay, so let's say for example this transaction. Okay, you can see from here. So this one still can allowed to cancel. You can see the available time is 62. Okay, so you can create request for the rejection. Once you create rejection, right, then you need to select what is the reason. Then wrong buyer, wrong invoice, or others. So let's say, for example, I click wrong invoice detail, then I just click submit. Okay, once you click submit this step, the transaction will go to your My Invoice Admin Applet. The cancellation, the cancellation part is under rejection queue request. Okay, so this is the request listing, and then when you go to cancellation queue, you can see your the request, the transaction still in queue. Okay, so this one I just request for the cancellation. Okay, after the user request for the cancellation, then the person in charge for the My Invoice Admin Applet need to go to do the approval for the transaction. Okay, so in this part, you can just go to approval status here. You want to approve it, reject, or on hold. Okay, so once you click approve, then the next step you need to go to processing logic to update this information. Okay, so this is a part that the user need to take note. You want to regenerate the new invoice, or you want to void the original transaction, or you want the new reversal document. Okay, so usually we will select the void original document. So that means your previous e-invoice will go to void. Then once the transaction is void, then your transaction will add back to your accounting part. So because e-invoice is you sell out, then once it's void, is considered cancel the transaction. Then it's added back to the system. Okay, so you can set void, then you can update and process the request. Okay, this part. Okay, so if you don't want to do the rejection of the e-invoice, so the alternative, what you can do is to do the sales return to the previous e-invoice transaction. Okay, so this part is for the cancellation part. So far, okay. So for the cancellation, so this one just for this example, you still can request for the cancellation because your available hours still valid. And then once you confirm the cancellation, then you can see the cancellation transaction. Like this example, the e-invoice status is valid. Then what is the cancellation request status is requested. Okay, still in progress. Then what is the request cancellation date? Okay, what is the reason? Then available hours. So this one still pending for approval. Okay, then after they are approved, then this transaction, if let's say just now they select the void transaction, then your status will change to void. So that means this invoice is void. Okay, so this is for the e-invoice part. Okay, so for the e-invoice, right, you can see we can send the e-invoice document while the e-invoice tab over here. Then the cancellation void is under e-invoice part. So in the menu here, the listing, you still can see the void discard send email. Okay, so this part is for the send the normal transaction to the customer. So like for example, you take this one, you go to send email. This one is send your original invoice to the customer, not the e-invoice. So we separate your system invoice and e-invoice format. Okay, and then so what is the discard button here? So the discard is for the draft transaction only. Okay, for the draft transaction, we can just use the discard button to cancel the draft transaction. And this void button is for the transaction without e-invoice, this one. So this void button and the e-invoice cancellation are different, two different process. Okay. Okay, so this is a summary for the cancellation. So for request for rejection, you click the request rejection button, then you key in your reason, then you just submit. Okay, once you submit, then you will go to the My Invoice Admin Applet to approve the transaction. So this is the cancellation detail after the approval part. Okay, this is the layout for the cancellation under the My Invoice Admin Applet. Okay, so once you click approve, you can see the request this. Okay, so what is you want to generate the new invoice or what the transaction reverses the previous invoice. Okay. Okay, so this part is the LHDN side. The My Invoice portal, just now I show you, after you log in with your personal ID, you can view the transaction under the document part, then the receive transaction side. Okay, so come to the Q&A section. Okay, we dare ask what happens if we choose individual in the sales invoice submission. So when you choose individual, that means the e-invoice is under individual account. That information under the buyer side. So depends the transaction, the sales invoice issue to who. Let's say for example, this sales invoice issue to this customer called who is it? Let me see. This customer name called Pay. Then the e-invoice is under this individual under this buyer name. So that means under the buyer Pay. So it's not under the personal, it's not under the company account, under the personal account. So this buyer name, you need to update the buyer information like their IC, their buyer tax ID, the email, the buyer contact number. So once you fulfill this transaction, the LHDN side will validate the information. Once it's validated, then this buyer will receive e-invoice, the valid transaction. Okay, so if this buyer they just give you the IC number without the ID. So without ID, that means you need to key in the general ID, the private ID, the EI 90, then 10. Okay. Okay. So continue to wait their question. Let's say we already put individual and it already post to my invoice applet. Can we change the submission type to consolidate? The answer is no, because you already submitted by the individual. It's under the personal account. So you cannot do the consolidate anymore. Because in your my invoice queue here, by default, we go to the batch pool. So batch pool here is under consolidate. So under consolidate, then it's under personal account, it will automatically go to the individual account. Okay. So Grace has seen this had to know which sales invoice got E-invoice can be conclude that better to don't allow user to void the sales invoice. Yeah. Once you implement the E-invoice to the user, so that means now it depends the supplier in which batch. So now if they're already in batch 1, then you need to hide the void button for the tenant so that they not confuse the transaction. Okay, because this void is just void the internal invoice transaction. So because now they have 6-month grace period for the consolidate. So for now, if they void the transaction, is still go to the batch pool and we cancel the E-invoice. We cancel the invoice transaction. Okay, so like they already live for the E-invoice implementation. Better we close the void button. So you can just disable the void under the setting part. You go to setting, then you go to application setting. Okay, then you go to sorry, it's under the gen.listing setting, this part. Okay, so you can hide the void button, hide the discard button. Okay, so this part you can set by the tenant. Is it mandatory to choose the submission type asked by Wei-Jie? Currently, yes. So by the moment you need to choose the submission, but by default we will change to consolidate method. Then if a customer requests for the E-invoice, then the user need to change to the individual. So by default it's all go to consolidated. Okay. Then next question is, let's say sales invoice created yesterday. If customer can ask to refund or cancel, should it be done under sale return applet or ask cancellation? Okay. So when customer asks for the refund, right? So better you go to the sales refund note applet. So we have another function called sales refund note. So that one is a sales return with the cash refund. So you can go to the sales refund note. Okay. So for the cancellation part, 2 options to do. Beside the sales refund note, okay, 2 options to do. The user can request for the cancellation from sales invoice part, like I show you just now, the cancellation part. But the admin need to do the approval for the transaction. So when admin do the approval for the transaction, then they choose what is the reason and what is the return type. So if select void transaction, system will void the invoice in the system. So if void the invoice, that means it's go to yesterday transaction. So when they reprint the report, they need to take note of the transaction date. Okay. So if not, you can still straight away go to sale return applet to do the sale return. Because once you do the sale return, we need to refer to the original invoice. And when we submit to LHTN, that sale return is under the sales credit note part. Okay, so in total, 3 options to do is up to their management, up to their operation decide which method they use. Okay, next question is how if previously customer come under general customer and next they want to reprint the sales invoice. Okay, so we not call reprint the sales invoice. First, if they request for the e-invoice, you need to get the buyer detail information. Let's say now is under general. So say for example, I issue to cash customer. So without any information, customer buyer information. So you can do the request for the e-invoice through the customer portal, because we have another portal called customer portal. Under the customer portal, you can request the buyer information to fill in the detail, fill in the buyer detail. Once someone requested this one as an e-invoice, right? Then we will go through the submission part just now. After submitted to the LHDN, then you can print this e-invoice. One is validated, then you can print this e-invoice to the buyer. Okay, so when you print to the buyer, it's refer back to the same document number, just that the buyer information updated to the requester just now. Okay, not we call reprint. We need to go through all the process, the e-invoice process first. Only we can reprint the e-invoice to the customer. Okay, once e-invoice submitted, requested, and confirmed and validate, the buyer can log in by themselves to check on their side. So like for example, just now I go to log in my invoice portal. I log in my personal account, then I can see any document that I requested. Sorry, let me change. So like for example, this one I just requested, then I can see once it's approved, then it's valid, then I can get my data. So after you get your information, right, actually you can click to view the detail. Okay, so like for example, we view this transaction, right? So this is the document, the supplier information, the company, then the buyer is myself, the buyer data, and then what is the product detail depletion. Okay, you can see the product depletion, right? They mention the classification code, and this is the product depletion. Then what is the UOM? Like just now, the pieces, you can see from here, pieces, the #87 code, okay? So the unit price, the total amount. And who is the digital signature? This is signed by the bank ledger, the intermediary company, okay? So this part already set by your tenant. Okay, then more detailed side is, this is the additional part. Okay, so for the user, right, sorry, for the buyer, actually they can just reject the e-invoice from their portal. So they can reject from here. Once they click reject, then what will happen to the supplier side? So the supplier will receive the email notification said that someone reject the invoice, e-invoice transaction. Then you need to go to the approval side to approve the transaction. Okay, if the supplier not approve this rejection, there still is a valid e-invoice. So it's the rejection, not just simply click and confirm. They need to go through the approval part. Okay, so if no more question, sorry. Okay, one more question. Is there any limit to request the e-invoice? Example, the invoice created last month. Sorry, because the consolidated e-invoice is within a month, 30 days. So you're not able to request for the previous month transaction. So you need to request within a month. So the consolidated for the monthly submission is next month before 7th of the month. So, but you only can request during the month. So let's say, for example, the 31st August invoice. 31st August invoice, you cannot request for the e-invoice on 1st October because it's cross month already. So it's within a month. So for the cancellation is within 72 hours. Okay, so if no question, thank you everyone. So this is for the e-invoice part for the sales invoice. So if you have any question, you can just email us, or you can just telegram us to ask more questions. Okay, thank you everyone.